Welcome everyone to the main journey, a way for you to join me on a learning journey through life. My name is Samuel Main, and today we welcome Mr. Luke Richmond to the show. Welcome, Luke. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Mate, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. It has been a while since we've been face to face, even in the digital world, mate. So it's great to see you.
Great to see you. Now, Luke, I first want to give the audience a little bit of an insight into the man, the myth, the legend that is Richo. So here it goes. And now this is a long spiel in itself. So Luke, you have climbed 6 of the highest 7 summits in the world, which in itself is an incredible achievement. You have set 2 Guinness World Records for rowing across the Atlantic, spanning 6,000 kilometers, which took 55 days of rowing, 2 hours on and 2 hours off. That bit always blows my mind. You have crossed the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, walking 1,800 kilometers over 57 days, whilst dragging all of your own food, water, and shelter. I know that was with your amazing partner, Elise, too. You have kayaked the full length of the Murray River in Australia, just over 2,200 kilometers over 56 days. You have cycled across Australia from Darwin to Port Augusta, just shy of 2,800 kilometers of cycling. You've most recently completed the Stowe Three Peaks Challenge in Australia, another challenge to add to the belt. Whilst on top of all of this, and this is what blows my mind, owning a gym in the remote island of Tasmania, being a very accomplished base jumper, a very high-level climber. You've skydived out of a hot air balloon after getting married in Las Vegas. You've published 2 books, which I've got them both here next to me. I know that you stay in peak physical condition. For anyone who's not watching the video, Luke is a big guy, got more muscle than any human should. Always stayed in very lean shape, and you're a motivational speaker, just to add on top. Now the scary thing is I've probably missed so much there. What does that feel like for you when you hear like that list of like those adventures?
Oh, mate, it's incredible when you do look back on, even just the last 5 years or the last 10 years. You tend to forget what you've done, or maybe not forget, but not, I guess, show that sort of gratitude and be grateful for what you've done, because there is quite a bit there. And because we're always pushing for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, sometimes it's nice to hear that, and you got to step back and go, bloody hell, we've been busy, It's been good.
I can officially say that's the longest intro that I've had, for sure. So you've just recently finished your latest expedition, and that was the Stowe Three Peaks Challenge in Australia. Talk to me a little bit about that. Can you give me a little bit more details of what that involved, how this came around?
Yeah, so this one is an Australian-based company called Stowe Electrical. So these guys have been with me on a few different expeditions now. The 3 peaks were actually in Nepal. So we wanted to go back to the Himalaya and have a look at some over there. So we flew over there. This is the first trip, post-COVID, getting back into the land of freedom. So we landed in Kathmandu. The goal was to do 3 peaks in one season. So we got permits for all 3. We had a small team, the same team we had for the Amadablam and Labuschagne expedition. When was that? 2019. So just pre-COVID, we were in Nepal as well. So we had a good buddy of mine, and as well, Yok from Thailand, the rock climber.
Yeah,
he's also very accomplished photographer and video guy as well. So he came along. So he took all the photos and video, and with Elise, we headed off. Now, these peaks, these are classed as, trekking, non-technical, technical peaks. So they're mountains, but in Nepal, because of the 7,000, 8,000 meter monsters everywhere, these are in a smaller bracket. So they're very cheap, very accessible, and a lot of people go to have a crack at these ones. So we wanted to do Mirror Peak, which was 6,400 meters high. then cross over a valley to Island Peak to do, it's about 6,200, and then finish with Labuschagne, which is 6,100. So that was the goal.
that blows my mind that you're doing those 3 peaks. Obviously, I'm planning to do Kilimanjaro in the coming weeks, and that's under
Yes.
6,000 meters. So you're doing essentially three peaks higher than that in one full swing, and it's kind of like a casual play for you.
It's good fun, and you got to remember it's on the back of a fair bit of experience. Hey, so
Yes,
go back 10 years when I was having a crack at that first peak, just like you are.
Yeah.
Kili was one of those 7 in the original 7 summits list, and it's a beautiful mountain, 5895 meters from memory, and a super tough last day, mate. You're gonna absolutely love it, But these days, because we have a bit of a different skill set, we know what our bodies can deliver and how everything works in the Himalaya now. To plan a month-long expedition and all the money and time and training to go and have a crack at one with, that fickle weather dictating everything. It's just, look, let's try for 3. If we get 1, beautiful. If we get 2, which we did, fantastic. And the third one, we got weathered out. So that's sort of how we play it these days.
I know that weather has always played a part in some of these expeditions. What's been the worst weather that you've ever encountered on any of the adventures you've been on?
Woof, Mother Nature is brutal and beautiful, mate. On mountains, the worst weather would have been on Aconcagua, so one of the 7 summits, just under 7,000 meters down in Argentina. It's on the border of Argentina and Chile, so it's the biggest in South America. On that one, massive storm just tore up the whole mountain. We were safe down in our tents at about Camp 2, but the whole Spanish team got wiped out in that storm, mate. So that was one of my first big introductions to mountaineering. So I was learning quite a bit, and my first big introduction to how the weather can just change and snatch your life away if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
On the ocean stuff, it would have been on my second ocean row trying to go from Australia over to New Zealand. I tried to do this with a buddy. Well, it was his expedition. He just brought me along to help out. We only got about 200 kilometers southeast of the New South Wales coastline, and massive storms sort of come through, big swells, mate, lots of breakers. We got rolled. I nearly drowned. It just turned into an absolute shit show, and we had to limp our way home over the following 5 days to get back to safety. So I've seen it in the mountains, seen it on the ocean. It can be brutal, and you have to plan for it.
Yeah, I remember reading some of your posts about that one, and you'd mentioned that even in your gut, you knew that something was up with that one. When you're in those really tricky situations where the risk level is sky high, do you ever have those feelings of, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Or because this is just so much part of what you do as essentially as a professional adventurer, is that just something you've now come to accept?
Mate, yes and no. And let me expand on that a little bit. Like you mentioned the gut feeling as we were trying to cross the Tasman. So that gut feeling, you can really start to trust yourself when it comes to those intuitions and that sort of gut response when you have a sort of past experience to draw on. So when you have so much history that's helped you, build these senses to what they are, well, then you can start to trust them. So I had that feeling straight from day one as we left the coastline, because everything was a bit rushed. The boat wasn't ideal. We had issues with the water maker, all these little red flags, but we were sort of swept up in, we've got to make the weather window. This is the 3rd attempt at doing this trip. It's got to happen. So we just sort of pushed through it. And what happened. Sometimes you might have those feelings and you get through unscathed. Other times, they're there for a reason, and we probably should have listened. Most of the time, no matter how risky a trip is these days, I won't have those feelings. So it won't be like, why am I doing this? This is like, fuck yeah, I'm doing this. Let's go. Even with the base jumping stuff, until you get to a point where it's like, okay, I've pushed this quite hard now for a few years and I'm done, and you pack up shop and finish with the whole sport. But I never had sort of those moments. So, but that comes from, past experiences, very good planning, training, preparation. Once everything lines up well, you won't have that feeling, if that makes sense. I mean, similar to yourself, you would have been doing your build-up training and planning for this trip for a long time, yeah?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I was just thinking to myself there, I've just asked a man who will voluntarily jump off antennas, skyscrapers, out of balloons, if he gets scared. So maybe I need to rethink that one.
But
So
it's not a silly question, Sammy, because fear is always present, mate. You know,
yeah,
you can never suppress that emotion, and it's there for a reason. It's there to keep you safe. It's to check you sometimes, you know. And every single base jump I had that fear, but you have to learn how to control it, learn how to adapt with it. But if it's peaking out for whatever reason, well, something's amiss. Either you're not confident in your ability to do what you're doing, or there's weather involved, something's not right. So you check it all, fine tune it all, and it should go away in the moment that's critical.
yeah. So maybe switching from fear to then what I would say pain or pain cave. What
Yeah.
adventure, what expedition has put you in the pain cave, or either for the longest period of time or just like the most intense pain? Because I know there's like different ways to approach that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's so variable. Like you can have the most horrendous, miserable, brutal day in the mountains, but typically a mountaineering day, even a big summit day, you know, you got 18 hours of pushing hard.
Yep.
You're going to be totally flogged to pieces, but then you might get to sleep for 10, 12, 15 hours. Yeah, so you have this recovery period. By far, the most suffering I've endured is the Atlantic crossing.
Yeah, well, that's
So
easy.
we had our team of four, so three of you Brits and a good old Aussie as a bit of an engine just to help out. But like you said in the intro, we had to maintain 2 hours of rowing, 2 hours of rest, 24 hours a day for, you know, whatever duration it was going to be to get across the Atlantic. We'd planned for 70 days and we did it in 55. So now you got this unique combination of first a massive calorie deficit. So you're just so low on fats and protein and all the rest of it. Sleep deficit. So you just, you know, you've got so much sleep deprivation going on, you don't know what's happening. The most sleep I could get was 3 90-minute blocks of sleep throughout the night shifts. And that's it. So that, you know, little 4.5, whatever period that is, that's all you've got for the whole night or the whole day and the night.
Days.
And then you've got Mother Nature throwing everything at you. And then you've got your, you know, total hours accumulated in that 24-hour block of rowing. So that there is by far the most miserable thing you can ever do. The friction, the rashes, the boils and salt sores all over your backside, everything. It's horrendous. I highly recommend it.
I love that you end that with "I highly recommend it." There's I don't actually have it in front of me. I remember the quote that you have. I think it's like you volunteered for this. Be grateful for the suffering, or somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, mate. Well, because I'd never rowed before I got invited on this trip, you know. So this is a totally new sport for me. So I was copping it. It was so hard. At least these other three had put in a good couple of years, and one of them was an actual college rower, you know, so she knew what she was doing. So I was suffering bad, mate. So I had to come up with some way, some, you know, psychological gymnastics to help me deal with that punishment. And you're right. I come up with this little mantra and I wrote it on the roof of the cab in big masking tape, sort of big Nico. And it was, be grateful. You deserve this. Thank you for allowing me to suffer.
So good.
So I just tried to change what was going on there. So I just started to realize that, hold on, mate, what you've been invited on this trip, it's an absolute privilege. You know, there could be thousands of people that had swapped their lives for mine to be out there and have a crack at this world record in a second. You know, so once I started to just be a little bit grateful for it, it didn't stop the pain and suffering at all. It just turned it down from 11, you know, it just took it back enough that you could then go out every 2 hours and just keep giving and get through it. And yeah, that's a mantra I've carried on to all of these expeditions. And whenever life gets tough, mate, I'm just always, you know, being grateful for that suffering.
I love it. I love that perspective. I also love that you mentioned it's turning it back from 11.
Yeah.
It's like you're already at that full sprint. So
Yeah.
obviously for me, you're someone that I highly, highly look up to. We've done some amazing things together, which we'll delve into in a little bit. But out of all of these adventures that you have done, is there any that truly stand out for you as like, that's my proudest achievement? where maybe you've had to overcome something that you wasn't like, that you hadn't planned for? Which one do you look back and go, actually, for my personal performance, or one that just stands out for you?
Mate, that is a bloody good question. I've actually never been asked that question in that way. And I guess all these trips, because I like different stuff, I like the ocean rowing, I love the mountains, the cycling, the kayaking, base jumping, all the rest of it. It's almost like trying to pick your best book or your favorite movie. It's quite challenging. Yes, some of the biggest highlights, I guess, is always getting Elise and the family involved on expeditions. So after the Atlantic row, Elise has pretty much come along on every expedition, which is fantastic for our relationship. But the Murray River kayak in Australia, I got to bring my dad along as well. One of Dad's dreams, this is where the inception of this idea came from, was I asked Dad, okay, Dad, you got 5 years left to live, mate. What's on your bucket list? What do you want to do? And he said, I want to maybe go down the Murray in a little fishing tinny, the whole way, the whole length of it to the mouth. I go, oh, well, let's do that. We'll do it next year. Bought a little boat, got some kayaks, and then we just lived for 2 months on the river, camping out, fishing every day, and had that really great quality time with my dad as an adult, which was a pretty special trip. So I really, really love that one.
Love that. It makes it so much so special then as well. So special. It's really cool. Really, really cool. So for someone that isn't used to climbing and doing some of these amazing adventures that they do, how would someone actually get started in some of these adventures?
Mate, the decision at the beginning is the biggest thing here. Like, you can have a bucket list, you can have all this stuff going on until you make a decision. So number one, make your decision. If you decide, okay, I'm going to go climb Kilimanjaro. Once you've made that decision, lock that shit in. So you book it, you do something, put a financial commitment on it, book your flights, whatever it is, because then you have an actual start point. What I've seen more often than not is so many people have these, big, unique goals and stuff they've always wanted to do, but they've never pulled the trigger on it. Okay. Once you pull the trigger on it and you've got your time frame between, okay, yep, we're ready to go and we're starting in this time frame, 6 months, 3 months, whatever, then you can get into all the nitty gritty. And everything is learnable, especially in this, very small world with technology where everything's at your fingertips. You can learn what training you need to do to look after your knees, ankles, get ready for carrying packs, hire someone like yourself to take them through nutrition and coaching, all that, so that's easy. Then you go and find a company or a commercial operator that's going to look after the safety and logistics aspects of your trip, which is what I'm assuming you've done as well. Because that's the stuff that takes years and years and years to learn. And if this is your first big adventure, that's where the risk is. You'll get fit, you'll get strong, you'll be highly motivated, but you won't be able to read the snow, you won't know the weather, you don't know the mountain, the environment, and everything that goes along to pull off one of these trips. So you'll probably end up buying onto an organized team, which is exactly what I did as well for, I think, my first 6 expeditions, But then it's game on, mate. Then it's just motive. It's just motivation. Like, if you really want it, you'll go and do it. If you don't really want it, you won't. It's pretty simple.
It almost becomes part of the fun, is that preparation and what you need to do to get you there. It's part of that journey. So what if you don't have a partner that is okay with these adventures, with these travels? Because I know that Elise is a badass in herself. Her intro is going to be just as long as what it is for you. I know that she's joined you now on a lot of these expeditions.
Yep.
For someone who maybe doesn't have that support, what would any advice for those guys?
Oh, look, mate, if you have a rock solid relationship, and you really love your partner, if you go away on big trips, it makes that trip so much harder. So much harder because of that separation. You're worried about them wherever they are in a city or whatever, and they're worried about you because you're out in the big bad environment. So that is a whole different dynamic. And I felt that the most on the Atlantic crossing that Elise wasn't on. And together, mainly from her as well, we said, okay, that's not going to happen again. You're not going to go away for 2.5, 3 months and me not be there. Otherwise, it's sort of pointless. You can't enjoy each other and spend all that time, which is why, you know, you're together in the first place. So I was very fortunate that Elise is a badass, and she just comes straight on trips, and she's done all of them since. So it's absolutely ideal. If she didn't, mate, it'd be very tough. And I could predict, unless there was a couple where she was just rock solid or he was just rock solid doing his own thing and happy to let you go away, and that time apart didn't really matter. If that's the type of scenario, it might be okay. But I would foresee that it wouldn't. It would lead to either the end of the expedition and venture life or the end of the relationship. I mean, what do you think would happen? Because you're about to go away and you're leaving friends, family, you know, partners.
Yeah, I think a part of it is that planning. So you know that you're going to be away for a certain period of time, so that then you can actually prepare for that. Looking at that Atlantic row for you, I know that you only had, I think, 10 days notice before going and doing that expedition, which is again part of that small print, which just blows my mind with that story alone. So I think that adds to the difficulty if it's not been planned ahead of time like that, which makes it a real challenge. So that Atlantic row, you had 10 days notice. For the majority of people, they would not have been able to go and start rowing for 55 days in a row on 10 days notice. That's a credit to the level of training that you sustain pretty much, you know, all the time. And you stay in very good shape, very healthy, train a lot. What are some of the principles that you have when it comes to health, fitness, training? Because I think there's a lot of people here who would be really interested to know, including myself.
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. Like everything, it evolves over time. You know, so I joined the military when I was 17. So I went from being, you know, a country kid who could run long distance but had nothing else really going on. I was a skinny little kid, to being in this machine where the entire reward system is around your physical ability to carry load, work in hard, you know, jungle environments, mountain environments, you know, shift, you know, weight across vast distances. So my whole reward system started to change. I needed to be big, strong, you know, very injury proof, because the worst thing you wanted to end up being was just, you know, injured and not being able to fight in your section or go on operations overseas. So when I transited out of the military, I had this reward system and a shitload of anxiety piled on top. Let's not, you know, forget that you're coming from this, you know, very, it's a confrontational world in the military. You know, you're trained to be violent and angry and all that. So you got to learn to let go of all that too. So you come out with a reward system based around health, fitness, strength, you know, physical ability, with a hell of a lot of anxiety and motivation. And I carry on with life. So that just led me into, you know, training every day as a normal part of my life, like I was still in the army. You're just doing your morning PT and carry on. Then you start to see, as you're going through life, the benefits of being, you know, bigger than everyone, or a little bit bigger than everyone, looking good, feeling good, the confidence, you know, all of that. It comes back to you in so many different ways that often you don't give it value. You know, by looking good, feeling confident, walking into a room, you're more confident in approaching people, talking to people. So then you get the job you were looking for, or you get something you were after. You know, you're building networks. You know, it carries you on a trajectory that you wouldn't have had if you were overweight, low self-esteem, not the best health. You just don't have those opportunities that just pop out 1,000 times, you know, in a year. And then you start grabbing these opportunities. So I went into the world of adventure because that's where I wanted to end up and go into. But you know, along the way, you have to live, you got to make money. So I ended up in the fitness industry. It just fit really well for me. Went into owning a big sort of globo gym sort of style with a few partners, transition into a CrossFit gym after that. Then when that business wrapped up for me a couple of years later, because I just wanted to get back into my adventure life, we ended up in Thailand, you know, where I met yourself, coaching and training at, you know, these big training camps over there. And, you know, these opportunities that pop up, like the row, when you took that call and said, can you come and join us on this trip? You know, one of our members has appendicitis. We've heard you're an adventurer. And the funny thing is, they heard I was an adventurer from a mate of mine in a pub who they're on the piss with, and they met him, told him the story, how they're going to cancel the ocean row because one of their members was sick. And he said, hold on, I know a bloke, let me give him a call. And I spoke to him that night, and it was on. But like you said, mate, I was, you can call it luck, but it's not really luck, because you've had a whole lifetime or 10, 12 years of training and putting time into your body. And I think at that stage, I was 94 kilos. You know, you and I were doing lots of CrossFit stuff, competitions, all of it. You were peak condition. So then I went on this row, and you lose 14 kilos of all that hard-earned muscle and this catabolic carnage. But that's all right, because you have this robustness in your system that when you come off that type of expedition, your body will assemble back to the other way. So it just puts on the weight again, feels good again. It's got all this type of memory in that nervous system, and you build back up. So it's a whole lifetime of progression.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Because as we're talking, obviously, it's bringing back flashbacks, memory, some of the cool things that we've done. But it also highlights again for me, like, just how much you have accomplished over the years. You know, we haven't even talked about you owning the gyms. We haven't even talked about, you know, the days in the military. We haven't talked about you being kidnapped for 10 days and being in the news. You know, there's so much to talk about. You're someone who I truly just enjoy talking with, and I can just listen to your stories for just years. You know, I just want to sit.
Likewise with you, mate. Likewise with you. You got a lot of great stories yourself. You're a fantastic conversationalist.
I want to lean into some of I think it's NLP, because I know that you started to do some more with Ken, I believe it is. And I know this is a relatively newer thing for you over the last couple of years, or that you've started to lean into this a lot more. Can you just share with some of the audience, like, what is NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, I think, is that right? Something along those lines, and why this is now being included in some of the things that you're doing with your own training?
Yeah, mate, I'll touch on this for sure. So not NLP. I get this all the time, though. That neuro-linguistic programming is different stuff. What we're doing is neurophysics therapy, so NPT. What this is, I mean, I'll backtrack a little bit. So originally in the first business, it was a Globo gym. Yep. So just your standard strength conditioning gym that you see on every street corner. Yep. Then I transitioned into this CrossFit world, this very dynamic, you know, tough on the body, must be coached well, you have to do everything right, mobility type world, and sort of learned a lot from all that as well. What was happening with my system, I carried a lot of anger and anxiety from everything back in the military days that I typically buried with booze and drugs for a few years. And you know, you push it all down, but you know, that toll on the nervous system has to come out eventually. And it comes out in psychophysical ways. So your anxiety, your depression, whatever it's going to be, but also in your body. So I started to generate a lot of pain all the time from my ITBs. My joints were always tight. I couldn't get rid of this tension and tone in my fascia, no matter what I did. You do mobility all day, and next second it's just tight again, you know. So this is just a consequence of all the baggage in your nervous system from past experiences. Now, I was fortunate in the early days of the big adventures. I was underground coal mining for some short stints in central Queensland. And out there was a big gym called Generations, and a guy named Ken Ware operated this gym with his wife, Nikki. And Ken was the pioneer of this neurophysics therapy. Now, in a nutshell, neurophysics therapy is designed to get you out of a state of protection. So it's to get you out of that sympathetic state in the nervous system, put you back in that parasympathetic state to let your body heal itself. You know, this big, bad, fast, furious world we all run around in these days keeps us in this constant state of hypervigilance, you know, this constant state of sympathetic nervous system arousal. Now, it can be very, very highly aroused, or it can be slightly aroused, you know, when you're on your phone scrolling away, just this constant burn in the background. But most of us are sitting in this sympathetic state. So how the program works, you know, day one, you know, program one, exercise one, you're sitting in, say, a fixed plane machine. So just picture your normal gym environment, 24 different machines, and picture a pec fly. Yep. So the one you're bringing across in front of your body. Imagine you're doing that with the lightest weight possible on that machine. With that first plate, number one, you've put it in there. You've got your hands up. I'm going to tell you to close your eyes, put you into a nice open posture with your feet out and knees out in this nice growth state. And then we're going to move through that plane very, very slowly, a millimeter at a time. Now, if I've got a client who's very hypervigilant, really sympathetic, constant state of arousal, when we slow them down and get them to move through this area very, very slowly in a quiet, calm, composed manner, you start to see all these different things happen in their body. Their traps might jack up, their face might start to clench, their knees are trying to come in these protective postures. So we've seen this stress response, this sympathetic response to this tiny amount of information coming into the nervous system. Yeah. And that is just not the way the human system is designed to operate. We're designed to see, okay, a big lion coming, bang, I'm out of here at full throttle, sympathetic as hell. And then brr, back we come, parasympathetic, heal, rest, digest, and go again. Stuck in this sympathetic state is what leads to all of the diseases and disorders that you see today. ME, MS, constant pain, anxiety, depression, whatever. It all thrives in this side of the system. So we might say, okay, Jenny, just pause it there. Let's calm your traps down. Let's do, fix this, this, and this, and we're going to move again. Do a few more millimeters. And we might see some more protective, things start to come into play. We have to detrain all of that stuff. So we'll take a client through 24 different planes, moving them slow in all these different postures, detraining that sympathetic response in the nervous system. Once we've done that, they've got good foundation. So they've got some good reference points in that nervous system when it comes to processing information from their environment. So we've fixed all of those perceptual errors. Then as the program progresses, try and envision 6 months later, Jenny's moving around, shifting half stacks of weight on all these different machines in a calm, composed way. Well, that tells you now that she can take on vast amounts of stress and information into her system without having that sympathetic response to that movement, okay? And the beautiful thing about the nervous system is how you behave in our gym down here in Tasmania in this calm, composed environment. So if you have a really over-aroused response, that's how you're responding every single day in the street when you get hit with a little bit of stress. So when we detrain all that and build up that system again, then you can walk around in the big bad world copping everything it's going to throw at you, but you're not going to end up with a disease or disorder because of it.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting to me because obviously it's so opposite. It's so opposite to all the normal literature that's out there right now. When you're training MPT, is that all that you're doing? Are you just doing multiple sessions of MPT a week, or is this supplementary to any other program?
Mate, it's just in the beginning. So it's like a calibration. We've called our gym down here in Tasmania Calibrate Tasmania, because that's what it is. We're taking people off the street. We're going to change all of their perceptions. Sorry, I'm not going to change it. You're going to do it. I'm going to give you the tools to do it, and you're going to change it all. Change your perceptions, change the behavior, a full reset, and calibrate that nervous system. Now, depending on the client, that might take a month. After that month, they can progress with the other NPT programs, which just, call them basic strength conditioning programs done in a very specific way. Yeah. But then you can add back in whatever you like to do, your sprints, your Olympic lifting, your CrossFit, all that stuff. But the reason you have to get away from all of that stuff first is because we need to change patterns of behavior. If you're trying to do one thing over here, but then you go that afternoon and smack Olympic lifting in this real stressed out, screaming, aggressive way, there's too much information. The system won't know where to calibrate to.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting. Because we go from the stress of everyday life to then into a CrossFit workout and put the body under just significant amounts of stress in that too. I just love what you mentioned about ultimately getting the body to a place where it's not reacting to that stress. It's just actually going through healthy movement patterns under control. And it's really, really interesting to me. I know that this is relatively new for you, and relatively new, I mean, like last couple of years is when you've been leaning into this a lot more. Is there any client examples where, you know, they've just got unbelievable results, or they've been able to change their life through, you know, parts of this MPT, or even through some of the training that I know that you do with the new gym too?
Yeah, mate. Every day we get to see, you know, the beautiful changes in people. And it's the really important stuff, mate, not the aesthetics. You know, you're not going to pump your chest up and get a six pack in the first month or even 3 months of this stuff. That's not what it's about. But, you know, we've had clients that have come in that couldn't go a day at work without crying 3 or 4 times. And, you know, 3 weeks later, there's no more of that. You know, we've had clients with chronic anxiety, having to leave work with stress, you know, stress leave all the time, just can't deal with anything at work. You know, 3 weeks later, or even a couple of weeks later, that's not happening anymore because you've detrained that response. Yeah, they've got new sets of what's called initial conditions. So when that stress comes in, oh, wait up, I've trained to be able to take on this in a calm and composed way. You know, I've done this in the gym, so their behavior has changed at work as well. I've just had my dad down here who watched the house while we were over in Nepal. Dad had horrific motorbike accidents and rolled his car 3 times, you know, all this stuff in his youth. He hasn't been able to turn his head properly for years. We put him through just some basic MPT before he left and just gave him some basics to go on with as we were away. And after the first week, he could do full turns left and right because the tension, you know, that hypervigilance that the nervous system has kept there since those crashes has just fallen away. That's just background tone. You know, that's all messages from the brain. So you need to change the perceptions, calm the system down, and that stuff can disappear in 4 days. You know, that's the beautiful, simplistic nature of the nervous system. Everything is fractal, everything is changeable.
It's so interesting because it's physical training that you're doing, but yet the biggest benefits are in the mental side. And that's so intriguing.
Everything is psychophysical, man. As you know, every single action, if I wanted to pick up that pen, it starts in my brain. It has to have some emotion involved in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. Behavior is always emotion. So, mate, we've had clients that start 5 millimeters into a thing and they'll just start bawling, or they have this rush of anxiety that they just don't know where it's come from. And that's just this, you know, emotional response to tiny amounts of information coming in. And that's what you can detrain. But everything starts in the brain. It starts with a perception first.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I know that for you, when you do your adventures, your expeditions, that your body weight and muscle size, it fluctuates substantially, no, massively. I know that you're, you know, a big, strong dude, and that's always how I picture you. But then I've also seen you, you know, post adventure, and almost a shell of the human that went on that journey before. Can you talk to me about just some of the most extreme fluctuations that you've had, and then also just a little bit about the recovery process after that?
Absolutely, mate, because this has changed over time as well. You know, before, you know, I had my burnout period and really found Ken and fixed up my whole nervous system, I'd go away on an expedition. So I'd be fit, strong, you know, powerful in that, you know, time period of my life, what I thought was fit, strong, and powerful. I'd have an expedition, drop all this weight, come back straight into hard CrossFit, straight into crushing yourself twice a day, eat big. You know, there was no overtraining, just under eating. So I was that type of gym rat. Yeah. But it has an effect, mate. And that's why these behaviors are very hard to detrain and get rid of, because I could put the weight back on. Was it the best thing for my body? No. Was it the best thing for my cardiovascular health, my brain? No. But I had a result. I got back to fit, strong, powerful, and I could go off on another trip. Okay, flash forward. I've met Ken. I've gone through years of this stuff now. You know, that anxiety's dealt with. The body's rock solid. I've now got in my system what's called some soft assembly. So just picture it like a flock of birds flying around in the sky. You know, a nice big flock of sparrows or something, and a hawk or eagle comes in, ready to attack those birds. They just split apart, eagle goes through, they come back together and just seamlessly flow on. Yeah, so they're very impervious to that perturbation. They just carry on. So your nervous system can end up in that way as well, where I can go away, take this huge hit of stress from the sleep and the food and the climbing and everything in Nepal. I dropped 9 kilos, but then I come back to Tasmania. You're back into the gym. I had probably 4 days back on the first program, just super slows, getting all that noise and fluctuations out of my system. And then it's only been a week and a half, and I've already put back on almost 3 kilos. By the end of this month, I'll have that weight back on. Now, this goes against all forms of linear progression. Yeah, the human system is not linear, mate. It's not an engine you pull apart and put a part back in. You cannot say, okay, you can only put on a kilo every few weeks, healthily and all that stuff. That's not how it works. The human system takes on all that new information and go, oh, he's back in a calm, composed environment. He's lifting weight again. Okay, I better adapt to this. He's sleeping good, eating good, hydrated, all the rest of it. Boom, you're back. So my time where I used to smash myself to go on another expedition, call it 3 to 4 months, I was ready to go. These days, it's about a month to 6 weeks, and I'm confident in my body to hold up to the next challenge.
Yeah, love it. Love it. That recovery is, it's a massive aspect of these expeditions too, because if your recovery was, months and months and months, it's going to put huge limitations on actually what you can do. I remember a little bit of a funny story. So for those who don't know, me and Luke did meet in Thailand. We were both coaching at one of the gyms out in Thailand. Then I think I moved back to the UK, and you and Elise came over. We bought a car for £170. Put that on my insurance, and off we went for a road trip around Europe. I think we've done about 10 different countries in about 6 weeks or something along those lines.
So we did like 8,000 miles or something.
Yeah, it was crazy. Oh man, the stories, I love it. I remember one of them, we done the 4 highest peaks in each district in Ireland. Is that right? Is that, and we tried to do that all within the 24 hours, didn't we? And we accomplished it in 23 hours, 50 minutes. I think the third summit we fell just shy, just because it was too dangerous, ultimately.
We can't claim it because I don't think we summited that third one because it was pitch black, piss and rain. We're all just shattered. We're like, nah, we're bailing.
It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Couldn't see a meter ahead of you. But it's such good stories. I remember we were getting ready for that climb the following morning, and we were at a wonderful family's place. We were sat all around the fire having a barbecue, and I looked over and you were over there doing pull-ups, push-ups and squats for a good 45 minutes before we were about to do this 24-hour challenge. And in my head I was going, there's a lot to learn here for me. I was like, this man's on another level. It was so great. So I mentioned there about sitting around a fire, and you're someone that, again, I can just sit and listen to stories, talk with just non-stop. If you could pick 3 people, dead, alive, anyone, to sit around a fire with, who would those 3 people be?
Wow, mate, that's a great question.
I'll exclude your wife Elise. She's there anyway, so you can't pick Elise.
Yep, no, she'll always be there, mate. I think, okay, let's break it up. For a celebrity or someone with that high profile, it would most likely be like a Winston Churchill type character, to be honest. Just because I have so much interest.
Yeah.
Not just in the period he was alive, but how he handled everything he handled. I think he's one of the greatest leaders, of the human race, to be honest. The second would be my grandfather. He passed away when I just turned 18.
Yeah.
And I never got to have, those adult conversations with him, which now, is just a real shame because he was such a smart man. He worked for NASA here in Australia. He helped put a man on the moon, got a little melted down metal. He used to mold his own glass and make telescopes that he used to sell to the universities. Like, just a super sharp character.
Interesting.
Stoic as all hell, British as all hell. He came over with the family on the 10-pound boats when my dad was 4 years old or something. Just a top guy. on all accounts. So I'd like to have a good sit and a chat with him. And the third one, mate, I don't know. Might just have to stick to the two. I think that'll fill up the whole night chatting to those two blokes.
Especially if you have a beer. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
those are different stories. We'll save those.
Can I ask you, what's your two? One celebrity and one not.
Oh, my two. Really good question. It's a lot more difficult when it's on you, right?
Yeah.
Then
ones that pop into your mind.
One would be potentially like Tony Robbins.
Oh, yep.
I think that would just be such an intriguing conversation of like, oh, just like the coaching that I could receive there. I think that would be.
I hope you get it for free because he might charge you like 50 grand for that.
Oh, his would be in the 7 figures now, I think, for him. And then the other, it's a very difficult question to answer, isn't it?
It is, mate. We'll circle back to it. It's a cracker. It's your question.
I need to flip some of these. Maybe I'll have to interview myself one day. Like,
yeah.
Let me. I might have to sit and ponder on that one, but I'll have it by the end of this episode. So, Richo, we spoke a little bit about our travels, and we were, we done some cool things. The hiking in Ireland. We climbed in England. We done a lot of the peaks. We done Snowdon. We done Ben Nevis. Quite a lot. Yeah. You've obviously traveled a lot of the world. Where's your number one place that you like to visit?
Oh, you always got these hard questions, mate. If we're looking for an adventure, Nepal would be number one and Alaska probably number two. If we're looking to chill out, mate, I've been back to Thailand that many times. It's not funny. One, because that's the place I ended up, right at the height of, or at the rock bottom period of my drug years. So just for the listeners, once I got out of the army and hit the road traveling, I had a lot of issues going on, and I found comfort in the booze and I found comfort in the drug scene over there in London. And, that led me on a pretty steep trajectory to the bottom of the barrel. Woke up in jail. I was getting hosed down by the police because I was just covered in my own filth, that type of scenario. And once I was released from that jail cell on that particular incident, I knew I had to change. So I went back to my sort of little flat or the house share I was staying at the time. Mate, I was in a bad way. I got high straight away, but I did call a buddy of mine back in Australia. His name was Liam, an old army buddy. And I said, mate, I've got to change my life. Help me. What can I do? And he was a mixed martial artist, and he'd been to Thailand on numerous occasions training. And he told me to go to Thailand, go to this place called Tiger Muay Thai, do some, training and clean yourself up. So I booked my flight then and there, high as a kite. I got in the black cab, finished all my drugs in the taxi on the way to Heathrow, and started to get sick on the plane, with all that stuff going on, mate. Fortunately, I passed out, slept most of the way, but then I went cold turkey doing 6 hours a day of Muay Thai in Thailand. And I was there for 2 months. At the end of that first month, all the toxins are gone, the booze, the drugs and everything else. But at the end of the second month, everything comes back online, your dreams, your aspirations, your personality, everything. Yeah. So from that point forward, I've had this, affinity with Thailand. So ended up back over there again on numerous occasions, training just to sort out myself. But then I was there working with you at unit for a while, working at Tiger for a while, in between expeditions. Always loved going back there because, when you mention Thailand to people, they think you're a pest straight away. So, you're partying, you're going for girls. It's like, oh, no, actually, I'm not even thinking about that. We go to this place where all it is health and fitness. It's away from all the red light district nastiness. It's just training camps, healthy restaurants, no one's drinking, and everyone's there for the same thing. All walks of life there to just get healthy, train, and sort of better yourself. So that was a long answer to your question. I'd probably say Thailand, mate.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's as you Thailand, that area of Thailand we went to, Shillong, it's a hub for personal development. really is how I see it. You know, the physical side plus the mental side. Yeah, you know, I was there for just under a year, I think, and some of the, you know, one of the best years of my life. It just wasn't going to be sustainable for me long term, just financially. But yeah, an incredible place, incredible place. I've got the second person that would be my campfire, Kobe Bryant.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. But I think that just getting insight into his mentality of how he approached the sport of basketball, but then also life, I think would be invaluable. So yeah, that would be my my second person.
I've got my third before we go on. The third, I've said Winston, my grandfather, now my great grandfather. Okay. This kid was a proper adventurer. He was one of the guys, not the first, but one of the guys who took a coal-fired paddle steamer from London all the way to Sydney to start the Manly Ferry. Okay, so this is sort of the character he was. So maybe these genes have come through and landed all on me, I'm not sure. But he was also apparently quite an interesting character. Married, but a bit of a womanizer, a bit of a party boy, and he gets buried in Sydney when he passed away with 2 women, and no one knows why. So I'd like to meet that guy and have a chat to him.
Love it. I like it. Yeah, that would be an interesting time around the fire. Richard, I wanted to start to lean into a little bit about your books. Now, even as we've been going through this, I keep realizing even more things that like we missed. We haven't talked about your time in Alaska. You know, we haven't talked about some of the darker days with the booze and the drugs, you know, in detail. But maybe we'll have to save those for another time. But
part 2.
The books. So you've got 2 books. I do have them both here: One Life, One Chance, and Vodka and Sandstorms. All the links and everything will be in the descriptions. What was the first trigger for you of being like, okay, I need to write a book? Like, why did that even come across? Why was this something that you ended up doing?
Well, I think it evolved naturally in the beginning, where you start to become the world's worst dinner guest. You know, you're that guy who can always, I guess, trump someone with a story, even though it's not a competition. You know, once you've shared one of these stories, it sort of goes, oh fuck, well, you know, I can't really beat that. So it sort of kills the conversation a little bit. So I started to have that happen on a couple of occasions. And once I'd built up, you know, I guess enough stories that I thought held some good value and meaning, I thought, okay, I've got to get this stuff down. But I was quite fortunate that when I joined the military at 17, a wise old sergeant on day 1 told me to go and start writing a journal just to help me deal with all the mental bollocks they're going to throw at us, you know. So I did do that. And I have all those journals from that day right up until today, where I can still keep them. So when I decided to, okay, I might try and get a book going here for my first book, I was fortunate I had all these journals to go back on and pull data from. If I didn't have those, it would have been a hell of a task trying to conjure up everything that happened. But it did come out quite quickly. Oh, yeah, I guess quickly in terms of writing books. It took me probably a year to write a really, really rough manuscript. You know, when you first start writing, it's dog shit. Okay. So it took probably 2 years to get a manuscript that was, say, half dog shit. And then it goes to an editor and they tear it to pieces and you work on it. So call it 2 years to take all of these stories and put it in a palatable format for everyone to digest it. Then you go for a year-long journey of publishing after that. But yeah, I think that was the inception point, mate. You start telling too many stories and you think, okay, it's time to put out a book.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, obviously I've read both multiple times actually at this stage. It actually reminded me of, do you remember being in Sweden and we had a picnic with Patrick? And I remember him talking and he was like, Richo, you have to write a book. He was like, you have to write a book. And he's published 7 books. I think he's now on his 8th book, and he's traveled close to 150 countries or something. He's
Yeah,
he's a unique
he's a
man.
unique, special character, hey,
Yeah.
and his whole thing, he's so successful in his own right, but every day he goes out just to try and get people to where he is. So over the years, he's been planting those seeds,
Yeah.
and he helped me along the journey when it started getting tough in those initial few months where you're like, oh, it's not happening. He goes, no, you've got to do it for other people. It's not for you. You have to share these stories. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
Patrick.
love Patrick. Love Patrick. I've paid him for coaching and mentorship. I've paid you for coaching and mentorship. It's just all my friends. I'm like, hey, let's meet more. I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. So with the book itself, um, I remember when we were doing the Europe road trip, you would go knocking on some of the other campsites and the people that were there, and you would just end up selling them the books. And it always made me smile. But I also know that you used it as a way to fund your trips in a way so I think this was when you was what do you call it? Not hijacking at all, where you were
Hitchhiking. Yeah, yeah.
hitchhiking. I was like, hijacking, that's not the word. Hitchhiking across Australia, and you were selling books along the way.
Yeah, mate, that came out of nowhere, that little adventure, and that actual adventure ends up in the second book as its own little thing. But when my first book was finished and they were distributing it, worldwide, but mainly in Australia and New Zealand, that's my biggest market. The way the publishing world works is, say a bookstore might buy 12 copies or whatever, and it sits on a shelf. If you rock up there and you sign those copies, if they let you sign those copies, they can never return them, because bookstores have a return policy. If it doesn't sell in about 3 months, they send them back to the distributor, and then that money comes off your back. Okay. So there's all these little hidden landmines in the publishing world. So when the publishers said, look, it's in, all these stores everywhere, here's a list, there's bloody hundreds. It'd be great if you can go visit a couple. I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I had fucking no money, right? I had probably, I don't know, $1,000 in my bank account. I was that broke author. Yeah. Good stories, but no money. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and visit all of the stores in Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, like as many as I could get to. And I didn't have a car, so the only way I could do it was I was going to hitchhike. So I thought, okay, let's make a whole thing about this. We'll put it out on a social and see what happens. So through the last $20 out of my wallet, so right, no money, hit the road, had a massive rolly bag of books. I think I could carry about 60 on the road with me, and a backpack with all my sort of camping gear. And off I went, got dropped by the train to the outside of Sydney and started. And I ended up visiting, oh mate, it was like 50 something bookstores in the 2 months I was hitchhiking around. But almost every single person that picked me up on that journey through all these states of Australia, so I think I went all the way down to Victoria, all the way back up to Brisbane, which is a hell of a long way, they all bought books. So I actually sold my first book on the train before I even got dropped to the outside of Sydney. I sold it to this old lady. And the whole thing was I needed to sell a book a day to survive so I could eat and, do everything I needed to do. And I ended up selling out that rolly bag after the first week, got them resupplied, multiple times.
Yeah.
But it's also where I learned to cut my teeth as a bit of a speaker as well, because part of that journey, I put out on social, anyone that wants me to rock up to a bloody barbecue, birthday, conference, whatever, I'll come and tell you my story. Then I just like you to buy a couple of books or whatever. So I had lots of invitations to do that. And my first ever speaking gig was to 4 PTs at a gym in Wollongong, I think it was, like just south of Sydney, where I actually sat in the gym, told them my story for 50 minutes, and then they bought books. So I sold 4 books. My first ever speaking gig. Rough, not much structure, not a lot of lessons in there, just telling your story. But it went over quite well. So fast forward a couple of months later, I've done almost 30 of these talks. And now you have a package that works, what they laughed at, what they didn't really like in that sort of story, where the sort of, incy wincy spider moments were, where you've come up, for the good and all that. So at the end of that, I realized, maybe I can make a bit of a living on this speaking circuit as well. And that's where I've, been ever since.
Yeah. So great. Obviously, I've been fortunate enough to have seen a lot of the presentations that you've delivered in a lot of different gyms and just even facilities. It's so great. And I remember actually, because I just moved out of the deserted hotel when we started our road trip, and I was also financially struggling. You know, I was just living out of a backpack then, and
You were living in some derelict building, weren't you?
yeah, yep. And then I remember I had that little festival tent that we were traveling around in, and I didn't even have a pillow. It was just like really living on the edge. And I remember my brother was in Denmark, so I actually left you. I think in Germany. I can't remember exactly where I left you. Maybe it was close to Denmark. And I then hitchhiked. And I remember being, I remember being on the side of the road asking you for advice on like tips with hitchhiking. And it was like, you got to have a clear sign, location, location, location. Don't set your final destination, just put the next town along. I remember going through all of that process. It's it's so funny to look back at that now. It's great.
Oh, mate, it's such a fantastic way to get around. And even down here in Tasmania, I still hitch quite a bit because I'd never waited longer than probably 5 to 10 minutes for a ride on that whole journey.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a lie. One time I got stuck on the outside of a town and no one would pick me up. It was like 4 hours. And then a guy in a house nearby come out and said, mate, the reason you're not getting lifts is because there's a supermax prison on the outside of town and they think you're a bloody convict going back to the prison. I go, okay, no worries. So I got a friend to come and take me a few hundred Ks down the road. Anyway, I didn't wait long and everyone was so nice, mate, as long as you go about it the right way. Yeah. Obviously, this isn't something I'd say, you know, a single female or a single guy who's not that confident with himself should go and do, but it is a fantastic way to get around. You meet some incredible people and they all appear in the second book. I wrote a full chapter on all these incredible people I met along the way.
Yeah, I love that. I still remember the guy that picked me up, a guy called Mohammed. He was on his way to buy his son an Xbox. You know, I can remember it vividly of what he was doing. I also remember you being like, yeah, deodorant. Deodorant is key.
A courtesy spray, mate. Courtesy spray so before you get in the car.
So great. So, Lou, I want to start wrapping this up just because I'm conscious of time, but this has been absolutely incredible. I just love chatting with you. I could chat with you all day, and I can't wait to get out to the gym, come see you, even if I come meet you in Thailand again. I do have a question which I ask all of the guests that come on, and I'm intrigued actually on what your answer will be to this. The question itself is, what advice would your future self give you in this current moment? What advice would your future self give you in this current moment?
You know what, mate? I can very honestly say probably not much in this current moment. I've done a lot of work and done a lot of changes in my life to be in the position I'm in. I'm doing exactly what I want to do when I want to do it. Very happy, rock solid relationship. You know, it really can't get much better than what we've got going at the moment. But if my future self could talk to myself, let's say even 5-6 years ago, he would say, don't be so angry. You know, a lot of us walk around just pissed off all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's the news, people on the train, work, just this constant level of stress. And we just put that out there. And mate, I was the worst. I had so much anger. And that anger come out in violence a lot of the time. You know, it comes out in pain in your body. And until I let go of that, you know, it was just so tough. Yeah. Life was just pissed off all the time. And you don't want to live like that. So that'd be the advice to my younger self, is just don't be angry. Let it go.
Yeah, love that. Love that. I've still got so many questions, but I'm going to go with one more. What does the future look like for you? What expectations have you got planned, or what's the intentions? Are you able to share?
Mate, yeah, flat out. We what have we got this year? We're off to Thailand to do a climb that we haven't done. There's a massive limestone tower that comes out of the water over there. It's called Ao Nang Tower. Now it's a 6C climb, which is a bit above our pay grade, and we really want to go and do it. You sort of kayak out, or you catch a boat to the bottom, and then you just climb this massive multi-pitch tower. So that's next. We head off on that one in about 3.5 weeks. So we're building up all the finger strength again. We'll get over to Thailand. We've given ourselves a month, so we have to get back in the gym first and get our climbing skill back. then get out on the rocks and just slowly punch up through those climbing grades to see if we can end up at that 6C. Goal number one, we're going to shoot over to Bali after that, to Uluwatu. A friend of mine is opening another training camp, mate. So you'll have to come over and see this as well in Uluwatu. CrossFit, gym, you know, the whole package, the normal stuff that's going on these days. So we'll do that over there for a few weeks. We'll come back and we've got, I don't know if you have them over in the UK, surely. They're called surf boats. They're a 5-seater rowboat that the old surf clubs used to use. All right. Anyway, I've inherited one of those. We've gutted it out. We've turned it into a 2-person rowing boat. So now they're sitting in the center so you can do your double scull rowing. We're also going to have a solar outboard on the back and a big battery, solar panels, the whole works and jerks, all the expedition kit. And we're going to take this thing from Townsville, which is a town in North Queensland, and we're going to take it all the way up the coast of the top of Australia to that point, go around that point, back down the other side to a town called Weipa. So it could be a 2-month rowing solar outboard style trip, trying to dodge big crocodiles and having lots of fun. So that's the next few. But mate, I tell you, the harder we push now, the more trips we do, the more we want to do. More mountains, more adventures, get back on the cycles, just keep charging. If COVID has taught us nothing, it's taught us that time is so valuable, mate, and you just don't know what's coming around the corner. So if the borders are open and you have the means and the desire and motivation to do something, do it now.
Yeah, love that. I think it's a perfect way to wrap this up. Richo, you're such a huge inspiration of mine, and every time that we talk, and it's not enough, I just feel so inspired to go and do more and be more. So I think I speak for everyone who will be listening to this podcast, but also those people that just meet you, is like, thank you for being you and just always being so open to sharing your journey, these stories, writing the books, the expeditions. It's incredible to see. And I just look forward to seeing you do even more, and hopefully myself being able to come join you on some more of these challenges soon as well.
Yeah, bloody oath, mate. Thank you very much for the kind words, Sammy. I appreciate it, mate. And best of luck to you on Kili. You are going to crush it. That last day is going to suck, and it's going to be the best day as well. Okay, so enjoy every single moment of it and be grateful for that suffering.
Yes, love it. Appreciate you, Richo.
Cheers, brother.